Hey, how you doing? Welcome to Curve's Classroom Workshops. I'm Samson Hawkins. I'm a theatre maker from Northamptonshire. I've made shows at the Oxford Playhouse, Soho Theatre, the Orange Tree Theatre, but more importantly, today I've also made shows at my village hall, my local church, and my old nan's flat. Because today I'm going to be doing an introduction on DIY theatre. So, what is DIY theatre? It's when you do it yourself, really. It's when you don't know any set designers, so you make a set out of something that you found in a skip. It's when you don't have the money to pay actors, so you make your mates be in it that have never been in a play before. It's when you don't have access to the things that are needed to make professional theatre. But you do it anyway. Because here's the thing about theatre, no matter how much money and experience you have, it's still impossible. If you're trying to do a naturalistic play, which basically just means realistic, it won't be naturalistic because there are hundreds of people watching the characters on stage. Like, if there were hundreds of people watching you now, it wouldn't seem very natural. And so theatre is constantly aiming for something which it cannot achieve. Ergo, DIY theatre, yeah, you're aiming something that you can't achieve, but so's everything else. So there's no reason why you shouldn't try to make the best play ever with just the stuff that you have in your room, because that's all the big theatres are trying to anyway. Because at the end of the day, it just comes down to telling stories in entertaining ways. And a budget of £1 million and a budget of £1 is exactly the same. It's just who can tell the story. And anyone can do that. So yeah, Fandango over there, he might have an MA in playwriting from Cambridge. But I'm kind of funny on occasion, and both of those things are equally valid. Fandango wants you to write the well-written play with lots of very serious dialogue of posh people telling each other why they're unhappy. But DIY theatre, that can be anything you want it to be. The only issue with DIY theatre is you actually have to do it. So throughout this video, we're going to make a show. We're going to imagine everything, and then we're going to plan everything, and then we're going to do everything in half an hour. Yeah, it is hoping for a lot at the end of this session. But again, theatre's trying to achieve the impossible, so why can't we? To do this, we're going to need something to write on. You could either split the screen for whatever you're watching this on and type on there, or you could have some pens and paper, or sticky notes, as I tend to use. It's worth pointing out at this point, this is not the only way to make theatre. This is not the only way to make DIY theatre. This is the way that I tend to make it because it works for me. Hopefully it will work for some of you. And better than that, I really hope that you do this process and go, thing number 1 worked for me, thing number 2 worked for me, but actually I didn't care about the 3rd and 4th one. And so you can take parts of it into your process and develop your process as theatre makers. I don't actually want lots of people doing exactly what I do, but I'd quite like lots of people to get a bit inspired by it maybe. I don't know. See what works for you. But the first thing that I do when I'm making a play is probably the most important, and it's how I think the show that I'm making should change the world. Now, I recognise that's quite a big statement, and I know there's some people going, oh, I don't actually think theatre can change the world. Well, it can try. Like, it can definitely try to change the world. I don't know if it'll ever work, but something's got to. So why can't it be the play that we're making? It could, in theory, change the world for the better, so we may as well try. And I don't mean to change the world as in, okay, global peace. Yeah, fair enough, that's quite a big aim, and I'm not sure my funny dinosaur play is going to bring about global peace. But it could maybe reduce some people's plastic use, which could change the world. It could maybe make someone slightly more passionate about anti-capitalism, and then that person brings about world peace. Or it could be to make people be nicer to old people, and that could change one person's world. And so changing the world isn't necessarily as grandiose as it seems. Now, I get that this is actually quite subjective. You could, in theory, do a evil DIY play. Personally, not so keen, but the system still works. If you wanted to get people to agree to a Thanos-style click of the fingers and population control thing, you do you. But the important thing is you're trying to change the world in a way that you think is positive. So first thing I want you to do is make a list. Really fun start, I know. And the list should contain all of the ways in which you think the world would be better if we changed. Don't worry about your play so much. I'm just going to give you 30 seconds and I want you to list lots of different ways in which you think the world could be improved. Don't think about it too much. Personally, not that fond of thinking. DIY theatre is more about doing. It's not called thinking it yourself, it's doing it yourself. And so just keep writing as many things that you think would improve the world. Okay, so I'm going to give you 30 seconds and right. Good. And now I would like you to look at your list and I would like you to pick the 3 which you think come off the paper or screen. 3 which you either find most interesting, 3 which you might find surprising that you wrote down, 3 which you might find that are important. It's up to you, but I want you to pick 3. Good. Either highlight them or circle them. Just make sure they are your 3. That is done. Now we're on step 2. So, step 2 is I want you to think of one thing that you find hard to articulate. So this could be a feeling that you can't quite work out. It's something internal. The first thing was external things that you want to change about the world. This is something personal, something about yourself. So for me, there's a feeling I used to be in special needs classes when I was at school, but then I got taken out of special needs classes and got into the main system of school, and it's the intellectual insecurity that I have from that, and that's quite a knotty feeling within me. It's something which I find quite hard to explain in real life, something which I maybe find difficult to say to someone, or someone that I can't quite work it out. And that's why it might be interesting to put in a play, because we can't work it out, we can't quite say it, we can't quite articulate it properly in everyday conversation. And so that's why a piece of art might help. Art is kind of about articulating the personal, and I think you'd be surprised how other people can empathize with what you're feeling. If not directly, then they can put it into their lives. So the point of this is to find one thing that you think, this is a genuinely knotty emotion from within me, and it's honest and personal. The good thing about theatre is that you don't actually have to say it directly. There's always metaphor. So if you feel like it's really personal, then that's fine, but you could put that through the guise of a dinosaur, and then you're like, oh, this is a cool dinosaur play, and then it's not directly about you. So you're allowed to kind of express personal things about your life or your feelings or your thoughts, but through a metaphor, and that's always quite fun. So now I'm going to give you 30 seconds to really try and hone in on one personal feeling which you think you could express through art. It's okay if you can't write it down properly, because that's kind of the point. 30 seconds. Good. Okay, so you've now got the first two things, which are still really important, but now we're going to do our third and final thing that we want to write down. And this is style. So with DIY theatre, you have to kind of recognize that, okay, if we do the normal kind of play, what people view as the normal play, posh people talking to each other, we're probably not going to be able to do that as well as the bigger theatres. But what we can do is do something more creative. We can go further outside the box because we don't have as much pressure on us as the big theatres do. So what we can do is use things that we're inspired by personally and try to add that into our play. And that's something that I always do. And so I'm inspired by things that aren't theatre. So I personally really like professional wrestling. And so I'm developing a story which uses professional wrestling as a base, like professional wrestling like WWE, using that as a base of a wrestling show, but then I'm also expressing the personal and political meaning throughout that piece. You could do this in lots of different ways. I've made a play set in a village hall talent show. I've made shows which just had lots of robots, kind of because I just wanted to experiment with robots. I've made shows that are kind of in an anime style, both visually and the style of dialogue. But make it something that you love. If you love playing guitar, then maybe make a gig theatre piece. If you could do like folk music or indie music, the point is that it's something from you. If you love to draw, then do a piece where you draw throughout the play and you draw a picture as the story's told, and by the end of it you can see that we've told the story and we have a picture of it. It's something that really inspires you, something that you think is, and the most important thing is that I think theatre is not inspired by other theatre, but it's inspired by the world around it, both personally, politically, and artistically. Hence the three things. So it could be about sumo wrestling or house construction or knitting or dog training or Minecraft or space travel. All of these things can be your style to inspire your production. So now what I want you to do is write a list of all the different ways in which you think could inspire you to write a story, the things that you're passionate about, the things that you love. Even if you start writing things that you don't really like that much, it doesn't matter. Just try and write as many as you can in 30 seconds. Go. So now we have three things. We have your favorite three ways in which you want to change the world. We have your thing that you're struggling to articulate, and we have a big list of styles. So now we have the hard bit, is that we have to work out a way to link these together. So I want you to start off with the thing that you're struggling to articulate, because there's just one of them. So we'll base it on that. That's the really knotty emotion that we'll try and work out through the piece of art. And now I want you to look at the ways in which you want to change the world. And I want you to try and find a link. So this could be, some of them have a similar vibe. And if you've been really honest about it, you might be able to find some quite obvious links. If the things that politically inspire you are probably quite similar to the ways in which you're personally inspired, and they could work together like that. Or what's really great is if they actually contradict each other, because contradiction and juxtaposition brings drama, and that's a really good way to start a performance. It's a really interesting place to start. So now I want you to have a quick look at the thing in which you're trying to articulate through drama, and then also at your list of ways in which you want to change the world, and I want you to try and find a link between them. Good. So now they are linked, I would like you to look at your ways of telling a story, and I would like you to add your way of telling the story that you think works really well with them. So if my feeling was about never quite feeling masculine enough in certain situations, then professional wrestling might work really well with that. However, if my thing was about being rural, the village hall idea would work really well. And so that's what I'd like you to try and find now. I'd like you to try and think of a way in which you want to tell that story. It doesn't necessarily have to make sense at this point. You'll find out that normally things will make sense on their feet. You just have to work it. But I want you to pick one. Even if one's not jumping out, still just pick one. Good. So now you should have 3 things, and I want you to write a sentence which can summarize it. So, for example, I'm going to make a DIY piece of theatre that tries to make people stop littering while articulating my feeling of feeling homesick, but not wanting to go home, with the form of an entrepreneurial guru event. So you've got your way in which you want to change the world, then you've got your feeling that you're trying to articulate through art, and then you've got your style. And I want you to link that into one sentence, and then we're going to use that sentence as a kind of manifesto for the piece. Good. So we have our fundamentals. Now we need a story to tell to get those feelings out. The story bit is actually kind of the easy bit. People have been telling stories since before they could speak, and they all boil down to the same thing, really. There's something, and that thing wants something. That's basically a story. You have characters trying to complete an objective, which would be the theatre way of saying it. Romeo wants to be with Juliet. Shrek wants his swamp back. In Finding Nemo, the character Marlin wants to find Nemo. Pixar are really good at this. Finding Dory. Try and find Dory. You get the idea. The objectives should mean something to the character. It should be important and something that's hard for them to achieve. So now I want you to look at your sentence. I want you to think of a character that links with your style. A character who is struggling with your feeling that you're trying to articulate, and then a character who has an objective, and the objective is linked to what you want to change about the world. If you're trying to change the world to reduce plastic pollution, then that's maybe what the character's objective is. Or possibly the character's objective might be to build a corporation that produces more plastic than anyone else. Keep it simple. You don't need to flesh out the character at all at this point. The character could be called Living Creature Number 1. That doesn't matter at this point, because characters are defined by their actions. And so their actions will be taken in the play to try and achieve their objective. So let's choose the character's objective first, and the characterization will come from that. So now find a character which is inspired by your style, who is struggling with your thing that you're trying to articulate, and has an objective, the really important part. What is this character's objective, which is inspired by what you're trying to change about the world? Go, go, go. Great. So at this point, we have a story, but it's a little bit boring. Living Creature Number 1 wants to be a ballet dancer. Good for them. But now we need to add some obstacles to just stop Living Creature Number 1 from becoming a ballet dancer. So going back to Finding Nemo, Marlin has lots of obstacles. He gets stung by jellyfish. He gets kidnapped by sharks. His son gets attacked by a little girl and flushed down the toilet. Marlin has a really hard time of it. But throughout all of those obstacles, Marlin keeps on trying to get to his objective. And that's basically the entire story. But the interesting thing in Finding Nemo is that he also has his thing inside of him, his thing that he is trying to articulate. It's how he doesn't actually trust Nemo to do anything. Now, in fairness to Marlin, his wife and kids did get eaten by a massive fish, and that's why he's feeling like that. But throughout all of those obstacles that he faces, he starts to learn about the thing that he's struggling to articulate. So now, what I want you to do is, you have your character-ish, and you have your objective. Now I want you to add obstacles that could stop your character from achieving their objective. And ideally, try and have a think about what are some ways in which you think that their character could start to learn about that thing that you're trying to articulate through those objectives. Great. So at this point, we have a pretty engaging story, I hope. A story which can engage people emotionally, but also intellectually, and something that we're going to work out about ourselves while going through it. So now I want you to think of the no-budget version of this play. And when I say no budget, I mean no budget. You are allowed a multi-million seater, which could also be on Mars if you want. You could have a zoo walk across the stage in one of the transitions to make it fancy. You're allowed the entire army to do a dance if that's what you feel would be work for your play. I mean, as much money. You could have every single Hollywood actor in your play. I want you to think of the opening of your story, and I want you to think of the most money, best way you could possibly tell the opening, possibly set this scene. So, if my character's objective was to go to the moon, but their obstacle was that they're scared of heights, and my style is inspired by slam poetry, I'm going to decide that my character is going to be a mole, and then that mole sticks their head up from the ground, and one day they see the moon. So they try to get towards it, but they get attacked by birds. For this, I'm going to build an underground theatre so we can see the world of the moles, and the audience are going to be underground. And then it's going to come up, and there's going to be, at the start of the show, a chorus line of worms. And they're actual worms. We're going to clone actual worms. It's fine, I can pay for it. And then There's going to be a chorus line of worms, and then Benedict Cumberbatch is going to play the mole. He's going to do the can with worms. And yeah, and that's how I'm going to open my mole show. I think it's a good idea. It does use the money well. So I want you to think of the most extravagant piece of opening of a theatre you can possibly do, and then just write a few bullet points about the weirdly extreme way that you could open your show that you have. Go as big and epic as you can think of. Don't worry about reality. It doesn't matter. Go, go, go. Now, I want you to look around where you are and think, okay, how can I tell that story with what I have here? So I don't have a chorus line of cloned worms, but I do have sticky notes that I could draw faces on, stick them on my fingers and make them do the can-can. I don't have Benedict Cumberbatch, but I do have me. I don't have the moon, but I do have a luchador mask that is very orange, so I could stick that to the ceiling and it might work. Now, I know you're thinking this isn't as good as what you were imagining. Fair enough. But here's the thing. If you were watching an Avengers movie and there was a magic trick, it's not that impressive because they know that whatever they do, it doesn't feel like magic. But watching people do something that you'd never think of, now that's magic. Jokes are funny because they're unexpected. People don't expect everyday items to come to life because they see them every day. By using things that people see in their lives, you're not trying to show how many resources you have. You're going, come on this journey with me because we're going to be a creative and we're going to imagine it together. So now go grab some things that you have around you and try to think how you could recreate the no money version of your opening, but with only things that you have in your room. Okay, go grab some things. Go, go, go. Great. So now you have an interesting story, a starting point, but who's going on this adventure? I want you to think of the main character or the protagonist, as Fandango would say. What we're going to do now is I'm going to ask you some questions and you're going to answer them as your character. You might have a really clear idea of who your character is, in which case, great, answer exactly what your character would say, or you might still be working with living creature number one, but still answer the questions and your answers will decide who the character is. So I'm going to ask you some questions, answer them in character. Hello. What's your name? Nice name. How are you? Ah, yeah. Why is that? Is there nothing else going on? Okay, okay. So what are you going to do today? Reckon you'll enjoy it? Cool. Would you like a cup of tea? Right, well, actually I'm recording a lesson right now, so I can't actually get you one, sorry. Do you live with anyone? And where do you live? Do you like it? If you could improve it in any way, how would that be? What would be the thing you'd miss most if it was gone? What would your perfect day be? That does sound nice. So now we have a character because you've just been them, and we also have the opening to a show. But here's the thing about DIY theatre. It's not think it yourself. It's not discuss it at length yourself. It's not imagine it yourself. It's do it yourself. So we're going to do it. We are doing our first run through now. It's the first run through of the entire show, so it's going to be a bit scrappy. I'm going to be the audience, but an audience who heckle quite a lot, and an audience who heckle quite a lot while knowing story fundamentals and will help you get through the show. So perform the show and respond to my heckles. This will feel really ridiculous, obviously, to run through this early when you have no idea what you're doing is gonna just not feel right. But here's the thing, 90% of it won't work, but 10% will probably be quite good, because you'll get lots of ideas from this. You'll know what works and what doesn't by doing it. Lots of people can sit on the sofa and say, oh, they've got this really good idea for a film, but never do anything about it. DIY theatre is for the people who have a really good idea for a play, and then they make that really good idea for a play. Okay, so you're going to discover what works and what doesn't. It's going to feel childish and silly, but at the end of the day, it's called a play, not a lesson. Theatre's basically advanced playing. So I'm the audience. So get off stage. Get off stage. Wherever you are. I don't know if you're on a stage. Get off it, because I'm the audience and I'm coming in. Oh, lovely. Yes, theatre, blah, blah, blah. Great. So really imagine where you are. Think of where your setting completely. I want you to imagine yourself in that space. It's okay if you change it halfway through. That's fine. Oh, cool. So there's some music playing. Do some music. Very good. Now you can just sing or hum or play some music, but I want you to do some music for the opening. Great. Okay, so the protagonist is coming on stage. Oh, and they're introducing themselves to the audience. And they're doing it in their chosen style. Okay, and so now the main character is setting the scene. They're either talking to another character, so now the scene's being set. The character is slightly discussing what the thing that they're trying to articulate, but they're struggling to articulate it. And now the main character is also placing the breadcrumb of what they would like to achieve. What is their objective? Okay, so now the character, something happens to them, which means that they start trying to complete their objective. Fandango would call this the inciting incident. So one moment happens to them which causes them to want to go complete their objective. Do it. Okay, so now that character decides to try and complete their objective. Remember, this is all inspired by your inspiration. Oh, but as the character's trying to complete their objective, they find their first obstacle, one of the obstacles that you wrote down. Do that scene. And the character just about gets over that obstacle. And now, as that character gets over that obstacle, they have a little think about the thing that they are trying to articulate. And they start to consider, ooh, Was I right about this? Was I wrong about this? And now the character continues trying to go for their objective, but they face another obstacle. So now the character tries to get over their other obstacle. And they succeed. Well done, character. But now, the character is in a position where they can see their final objective. Can they achieve their objective? If they get over this final obstacle, then they will achieve their objective. Now you're going to do a scene, and this is the climax of the play. And in this scene, you can achieve your objective or you fail. It's okay if the character fails their objective. Do the scene. Now, the characters achieve their objective and they start to consider that thing which they were feeling really knotty inside. Okay? So this will be our summary of the play. Good. So you've just had a run through of a whole piece of theatre. It was probably 90% not very good, but there would have been little bits which you can do and little bits which you can take forward. And if you keep on working on it and making it better, that's what DIY theatre is all about. No one ever does a good first run through, because if we did, then theatre wouldn't really be hard, and theatre's an impossible medium, and that's kind of the point. But the great thing about it being impossible is that it's impossible for everyone. It's impossible for the National Theatre, and it's impossible for you in your room. It's exactly the same thing. And so we're all in the same position. So hopefully you found some things in that workshop which you could take forward. I mean, it'd be great if you continued the play that you made, or if it just affected how you think about theatre. I hope you had fun. I hope you may have learnt something. That's all from me. Farewell. Bye-bye.